The Versace dress felt like liquid gold against my skin, but all the expensive fabric in the world couldn't mask the anxiety coursing through my veins. 6 months ago, I was just Sophia Reyes, a nobody bartender at La Rosa, mixing drinks for men who never remembered my face. Now I stood in a penthouse bathroom larger than my old apartment, staring at a stranger in the mirror. A woman draped in diamonds, engaged to one of the most dangerous men in the city. 10 minutes, Miss Sophia. Marco's voice, my fiancé's most trusted security detail, came through the door. His tone was always respectful but firm, a constant reminder that nothing in Dante Salvatore's world happened without precision and control. I touched the teardrop diamond hanging from my neck, a gift from Dante on the night he proposed. "Every jewel in this world pales next to you," he had whispered, his Italian accent thickening with emotion as he fastened it around my neck. The same hands that had orchestrated violence I pretended not to know about had trembled slightly against my skin. "I'll be right out," I called back, applying another coat of the blood-red lipstick Dante preferred. The color made me look paler, more fragile. Perhaps that was why he liked it so much. Dante always seemed to cherish my vulnerability, as if it was something precious to protect or to possess. The marble under my heels felt cold as I made my way through our bedroom. Our cage, my mind sometimes whispered in the darkest hours of night. The walls were a soft cream color, the furniture imported from Italy, every detail handpicked by Dante's interior designer with specific instructions to create a space that would make Sophia happy. I wondered if anyone had ever asked what actually made me happy. The sounds of the engagement party floated up from the lower levels of Dante's mansion. String quartet music, champagne glasses clinking, polite laughter that never quite reached sincerity. I paused at the top of the grand staircase, my hand trembling slightly on the banister. 50 steps separated me from the crowd of Chicago's elite, most of whom were connected to Dante's business interests in ways I had learned not to question. "There you are." Mar, the voice that had first captivated me 6 months ago, cut through my thoughts. Dante appeared at the bottom of the staircase, his 6'2" frame commanding attention in a custom black tuxedo. At 34, he moved with the confidence of a man who had already conquered his world and secured his territory. His dark eyes found mine, and even from this distance, I could feel the possessive heat in them. I watched him ascend the stairs toward me, his movement fluid like a predator's. He never took his eyes off me, never glanced back at the guests who parted like a sea behind him. To Dante, they ceased to exist the moment he saw me. "You look breathtaking," he said when he reached me, his fingers gently tilting my chin up. "But you're late." The words held no anger, only an observation, yet I felt the weight of disappointment behind them. "I'm sorry," I whispered automatically. "I just needed a moment." Something flickered across his face. Concern, perhaps, or suspicion. Dante saw everything, noticed every micro-expression, every hesitation. It was what made him successful in his world, and sometimes terrifying in mine. "Are you having second thoughts, tesoro mio?" His thumb brushed my lower lip, careful not to smudge the lipstick. "About us?" "No," I lied, because what choice did I have? 6 months into this whirlwind relationship, and I was too deep to see any way out. I had fallen for him that night at La Rosa, when he'd left me a $5,000 tip and a note with his number. What had seemed like a fairy tale quickly revealed itself to be something darker, more complex, a labyrinth with Dante at its center, watching, waiting, loving me with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Dante smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes but softened his sharp features. "Good. Because you're mine now, Sophia, forever." He took my hand, the 8-carat engagement ring catching the light. "Come. Everyone is waiting to meet my future wife." As we descended the staircase, his hand rested on the small of my back. Protective, possessive. I could feel the eyes of the guests tracking our movement, assessing me, this outsider who had somehow captured the heart of Dante Salvatore. Women with plastic surgery perfection and men with power etched into the lines of their faces nodded in acknowledgement as we passed. "Mr. Salvatore," a older man with silver hair stepped forward. "Congratulations on your engagement. Your father would have been proud to see the Salvatore family continuing its legacy." Dante's grip on my waist tightened imperceptibly. Thank you, Counselor Richards. I believe you haven't met my fiancée, Sophia. The man's eyes swept over me with clinical precision. A pleasure, my dear. You've captured quite a prize. I smiled the empty smile I had perfected. The prize is all mine. Dante's lips brushed my temple, his breath warm against my skin. She's modest, he said, but the undercurrent in his voice was clear. I was the prize, the possession, the trophy he had claimed. We moved through the crowd like royalty, Dante introducing me to people whose names blurred together. Businessmen, politicians, other family heads. All of them speaking in coded language about ventures and arrangements that I understood meant something entirely different from their surface meanings. Sophia, darling, a woman's voice cut through the noise. Gabriella, Dante's sister, approached with 2 champagne flutes. At 30, she was the only member of Dante's inner circle who had shown me genuine kindness. You look like you need this. She handed me a glass with a knowing smile. Thank you, I murmured, taking a small sip. The bubbles felt like pinpricks on my tongue. Don't worry, she whispered. The first official event is always the worst. It gets easier. Before I could respond, the atmosphere in the room shifted. A ripple of tension spread like wildfire, conversations halting mid-sentence. Dante, who had been speaking with a group of men near the fireplace, suddenly went rigid. His entire body stilled in a way I had never seen before, like a predator sensing danger. I followed his gaze to the entrance of the grand hall, where Marco stood with an unexpected guest. A woman. Even from across the room, I could see she was stunning, tall and willowy, with olive skin and raven black hair cascading down her back. She wore a form-fitting emerald dress that accentuated the unmistakable curve of her stomach. 4, maybe 5 months pregnant. Who is that? I asked Gabriella, my voice barely audible. Gabriella's face had drained of color. Valentina Russo, Dante's ex-wife. The words hit me like a physical blow. Ex-wife? In 6 months of sharing his bed, his home, his life, Dante had never once mentioned he had been married before. I need to go, Gabriella said, already moving toward her brother. I stood frozen, champagne glass clutched in my trembling hand, as Valentina's eyes scanned the room with calculated precision until they locked with mine. A small, knowing smile curved her perfect lips. Then she looked past me to where Dante stood and called out in a voice that carried through the silent room. Hello, husband. Aren't you going to greet the mother of your child? The glass slipped from my fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot through the hall, but no one turned to look. All eyes remained fixed on the triangle that had suddenly formed. Dante, me, and the pregnant woman claiming to carry his child. Dante's face, usually so controlled, so composed, showed something I had never seen before: fear. Not for himself, I realized with sickening clarity, but for what this moment would do to the perfect world he had constructed, to the future he had planned for us. As security moved toward Valentina, she placed a protective hand over her belly and locked eyes with me again. Has he told you about me, little bartender? About us? Or did he pretend I never existed? Dante was suddenly beside me, his arm around my waist like an iron band. Get her out of here, he ordered Marco, his voice deadly calm despite the storm I could feel raging beneath his surface. Dante, I whispered. What is happening? Who is she? Nothing for you to worry about, Tesoro, he said, but his eyes never left Valentina as security began to escort her toward the exit. A desperate woman making desperate claims. But Valentina's laugh echoed through the hall as she was led away. Ask him about Istanbul, Sophia. Ask him why he left me there. Ask him what happened to the first baby. The room spun around me, faces blurring into a kaleidoscope of judgment and curiosity. I could hear whispers starting, the gossip machine already churning. Dante's fingers dug into my waist, anchoring me to him as if he could physically prevent me from processing what I had just heard. I need air, I gasped, pulling away from him. Sophia. His voice hardened with warning. Don't make a scene. But for the first time since I'd met him, I ignored Dante's command. I turned and pushed through the crowd, desperate to escape the suffocating weight of revelations and lies. I heard him call my name again, felt the collective inhale of shock from the guests at my defiance. But I couldn't stop. I stumbled onto the terrace, the cool night air hitting my flushed skin like a slap. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond Dante's estate grounds, lights twinkling with a freedom I suddenly realized I had surrendered piece by piece since the night I accepted his number, his attention, his world, Sophia. He had followed me, of course. Dante would never allow me to run, not even a few steps away. I heard the glass door slide shut behind him, sealing us in our private drama while the party continued inside. "Look at me." I turned, tears blurring my vision. "You were married?" "Yes." At least he didn't deny it. "And she's pregnant." His jaw tightened. "If she is, the child isn't mine." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I haven't been with her in over 2 years. He stepped closer, his cologne, sandalwood, and something exclusively him, enveloping me. "She's trying to manipulate her way back into my life, into my fortune." "What happened in Istanbul?" I asked, remembering Valentina's parting shot. Something dangerous flashed in Dante's eyes. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with." "And the first baby? What did she mean?" Dante's hands gripped my shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to command my full attention. "Listen to me carefully, Sophia. Valentina is unwell. She has been since our divorce. Whatever she said tonight was designed to hurt me by hurting you. Do you understand?" I wanted to believe him. God help me. I still wanted to believe in the man I thought I knew. "I need the truth, Dante. All of it. Or I walk out that door right now." The muscle in his jaw ticked as he studied my face, perhaps measuring my determination against his need for control. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "Not here. Not with them watching." He nodded toward the glass doors where I could sense rather than see the eyes of his associates trying to glimpse our private confrontation. "After the party." "No," I said, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. "Now, or this engagement is over." For a moment I thought I had pushed too far. The darkness that Dante kept carefully leashed simmered behind his eyes. Then he took my elbow and guided me away from the terrace, down a stone path that led to his private garden, a place none of his guests would dare follow without explicit invitation. In the secluded gazebo, surrounded by roses he had imported from Italy because they reminded him of his mother's garden, Dante Salvatore prepared to tell me the truth that would either bind us closer or break us completely. And I, Sophia Reyes, the bartender who had stumbled into a world of power and darkness, stood on the precipice of a decision that would change the course of my life forever. The gazebo lights cast long shadows across Dante's face, highlighting the sharp angles of his cheekbones and jaw. For a moment, he looked like the stranger he truly was, a man with secrets I had never bothered to uncover, blinded by the intoxicating whirlwind of our relationship. "Valentina and I met in Milan," he began, his voice low and controlled. "I was expanding the family business into Europe, and her father was a significant player in the Italian import market. An arranged marriage," I said, understanding immediately. Dante's eyes flicked to mine, a hint of surprise in them. "Not officially, but effectively, yes. Our union consolidated certain interests, made things smoother." The cool night air prickled against my skin as I hugged myself, suddenly feeling the chill despite the warmth of the evening. "You married her for business. I married her because it was expected." His hands slid into his pockets, a rare gesture of uncertainty from a man who moved through life with absolute conviction. The Salvatores and the Russos had been allies for generations. When her father suggested the match, my father saw the advantages. "And did you love her?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Something resembling pain crossed Dante's features. "I respected her. We had a good partnership. Not love then. But something else had been there. I could see it in the tightness around his eyes." "What happened in Istanbul?" I pressed, remembering the accusation that had seemed to cut deepest. Dante turned away from me, staring out at the rose garden that stretched beyond the gazebo. For several heartbeats, only the distant sounds of the party and the gentle rustle of leaves filled the space between us. "We had been married 3 years, he finally said. "Things were strained. Valentina wanted a child, needed one," she said, An heir for both families. When she got pregnant, it seemed like everything might work out. My stomach twisted. So there was a first baby. Dante's shoulders tensed, the fabric of his expensive tuxedo stretching across his back. Yes. What happened? He turned back to me, and for the first time since I'd known him, Dante looked vulnerable. We went to Istanbul for a business meeting. I had some complicated negotiations that required my personal attention. I asked her not to come, but she insisted, said she was tired of being left behind. I could almost see it, a younger Dante, already powerful but still building his empire, and the beautiful Valentina demanding her place at his side. The meeting went badly. Someone had leaked information about our shipments. Millions were lost. His voice hardened. We were returning to our hotel when our car was attacked. Professional hit, targeting me. A cold shiver ran through me. And Valentina was with you. She was 7 months pregnant. The weight of those words hung in the air between us. I didn't need him to continue to understand what had happened next, but he did anyway. She lost the baby. The doctors said the trauma, the stress. He shook his head. She blamed me. Said I knew it was dangerous, that I should have protected them better, and she was right. I stepped closer, unable to stop myself from reaching for his hand. Dante, I'm so... He pulled away, and I felt the distance between us expand like a physical force. After that, everything changed. She changed, became reckless, self-destructive, started using drugs to cope with the depression. I tried to help her, private doctors, rehab facilities. But she didn't want my help. She wanted revenge. For the baby, I whispered. For everything. Dante's eyes met mine, cold and distant now. She had an affair with Antonio Bianchi, my father's right hand, the one person I was never supposed to doubt. The betrayal must have been devastating, not just personally, but in his world, where loyalty was currency and betrayal was punishable by death. What did you do? I asked, suddenly afraid of the answer. What do you think I did, Sophia? His voice was dangerously soft. I divorced her. Gave her enough money to disappear and start over somewhere far away from me. And I dealt with Antonio as was necessary. The implication was clear, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. This was the reality of loving Dante Salvatore, the darkness that lurked beneath the luxury and romance. And now she's back, I said, trying to process everything. Pregnant. If she's truly pregnant, the child isn't mine. His certainty left no room for doubt. We haven't been together since before the divorce was finalized 2 years ago. Then whose? I don't know, and I don't care. Dante moved toward me with the fluid grace that had first captivated me, his hands coming to rest on my shoulders. All that matters is you, us, the life we're building. I wanted to believe him, but the foundation of that life had just revealed its cracks. You should have told me you were married before, I said, meeting his gaze. You should have trusted me with your past. The past is irrelevant. His fingers tightened slightly. I left it behind me. Started fresh the moment I saw you mixing that ridiculous blue cocktail at La Rosa. Despite everything, a small smile tugged at my lips. The blue horizon. You ordered it just to get my attention. And it worked. His thumb traced my jawline, didn't it? Before I could answer, the sound of heels on stone interrupted us. Gabriella appeared at the entrance to the gazebo, her expression tense. I'm sorry, she said, looking between us, but you need to come back inside. Valentina's making a scene, and Salvatore men are arriving. Dante's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The vulnerable man who had been sharing his past vanishing behind the mask of the powerful mafia boss. I thought Marco removed her. He tried. She created enough of a disturbance that removing her forcefully would have attracted too much attention. And now Vincenzo Russo is here with his men. Her father. Dante's voice was ice, perfect. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? Dante's eyes met mine, and I saw the calculation behind them. It means this just became complicated, Tesoro. Stay with Gabriella. Don't leave her side. Dante. But he was already striding away, his phone in hand, issuing quiet orders to someone on the other end of the line. I watched as security personnel materialized from various points around the garden, falling into step behind him. "Come on," Gabriella said, taking my arm. "Let's go somewhere quiet until this blows over." "No." I pulled away from her. "I need to see what's happening." "Sophia, please." Her eyes pleaded with me. "My brother gave you an order for your own protection." "I'm not one of his men, Gabriella. I'm supposed to be his wife." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. "And I'm tired of being kept in the dark." I moved past her, following the path Dante had taken back toward the mansion. Through the glass doors, I could see the party had transformed. The social elite who had been mingling earlier had retreated to the perimeter of the room, while a new group of men, hard-faced, vigilant, some with the telltale bulges of concealed weapons beneath their jackets, had formed a loose semicircle near the main entrance. Dante stood at the center of his own group, his posture relaxed but alert. Across from him, a distinguished older man with silver-streaked black hair was speaking, his hands moving in emphatic gestures. Between them, Valentina stood with regal posture, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. I slipped back into the room, staying close to the wall, trying to remain unnoticed as I moved close enough to hear. Insulting my daughter Salvatore, questioning the paternity of my grandchild. Vincenzo Russo's accented English carried across the now silent room. "With all due respect, Vincenzo," Dante replied, his voice controlled but cold. "Your daughter showed up uninvited to my engagement party, making claims that are demonstrably false. We haven't been together in over 2 years. Valentina's laugh was bitter. "Is that what you tell yourself, Dante? That night in Rome, 6 months ago, was I imagining that?" My heart stuttered in my chest. 6 months ago, right around the time Dante and I had first met. "There was no night in Rome," Dante said flatly. "I haven't set foot in Italy since last year's meeting in Naples. Liar." Valentina's eyes flashed. "You were there for the Genovese auction. We had dinner at Il Pagliaccio. You took me back to your hotel afterward." I watched Dante's face for any flicker of recognition, any hint of guilt. His expression remained impassive. "As entertaining as your delusions are, Valentina, I was in Chicago 6 months ago. You can check the flight records, security footage, credit card statements. I wasn't in Rome." "You're trying to gaslight me again," she hissed, turning to address the stunned guests. "This is what he does. Manipulates, lies, makes you think you're crazy. He did it our entire marriage." Vincenzo placed a restraining hand on his daughter's arm. "Enough, Valentina. This isn't the place." "When is the place, Papa?" Her voice cracked with emotion. "He abandoned me after I lost our baby. Left me broken while he moved on without a second thought. And now he's doing it again. Denying his own child." The room was so silent you could hear the ice melting in abandoned drinks. I felt exposed suddenly, as if every eye had turned to me. The replacement. The new woman Dante had chosen. "I'm not denying anything that's mine," Dante said, his voice dangerously soft. "But this child isn't mine, Valentina. And I think you know that." She stepped toward him, close enough that they could have touched. "Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't come to me that night in Rome. That we didn't fall back into old patterns just for one night." Something shifted in Dante's expression. Not guilt, exactly, but hesitation. A fraction of a second's pause that no one else might have noticed, but I did. "I didn't," he said, holding her gaze. "And we both know who the father really is." Valentina's hand struck out, slapping Dante across the face with enough force to turn his head. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. In an instant, Dante's security moved forward, but he held up a hand, stopping them. Vincenzo's men had also tensed, hands moving toward weapons, the situation balanced on a knife's edge. "Enough," Dante said, his voice carrying a finality that seemed to ripple through the room. "Marco, please escort Miss Russo and her father out. The party is over." As security began ushering guests toward the exit, Dante's eyes found mine across the room. The look in them was unreadable, part apology, part warning, part something darker I couldn't name. Valentina followed his gaze, her eyes locking with mine. "Poor little Sophia," she called out, her voice carrying over the murmurs of the departing guests. "You think you're different? Special? I was you once. Young, in love, believing I could tame him. Her laugh was brittle. Ask yourself why he chose a bartender when he could have anyone. It's because you're malleable, easily controlled. No family connections, no power of your own. Marco took her arm, trying to guide her away, but she resisted. He'll consume you, she continued, her eyes never leaving mine. Take everything, leave nothing. And when he's done, when you're broken like I was, he'll find another girl to replace you. That's enough. Dante's voice cut through the room like a blade. But Valentina wasn't finished. As Marco finally managed to lead her toward the exit, she called back. Check his phone, Sophia. The second one he keeps in his office safe. Ask him about Celeste. And then she was gone, leaving behind a room thick with tension and unspoken questions. The remaining guests quickly made their exits, murmuring apologies and goodbyes that couldn't disguise their eagerness to spread the night's gossip. Within minutes, only Dante's inner circle remained. His security team, Gabriella, a few trusted lieutenants, and me, standing alone by the wall where I had hidden myself during the confrontation. Dante conferred quietly with his men, issuing instructions in low, urgent tones. Occasionally his eyes would flick to me, checking that I was still there, still his. Finally, as the last of his men dispersed to their assigned tasks, he approached me. His composure had returned fully, not a hair out of place despite the chaos of the evening. Only the faint red mark on his cheek from Valentina's slap suggested anything had happened at all. I'm sorry you had to witness that, he said, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, but my fingers remained limp in his grasp. Who is Celeste? Dante's expression hardened. No one you need to concern yourself with. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight. His tone softened slightly as he brushed a strand of hair from my face. It's been a difficult evening. You should rest. I don't want to rest, Dante. I want the truth. I pulled my hand from his. All of it this time. His eyes darkened. The truth is that Valentina is unstable and desperate. She's using this pregnancy, whoever's child it really is, to try to force her way back into my life. Back into my wallet, more accurately. And Rome? 6 months ago? I told you I wasn't there. You hesitated when she asked you. A muscle ticked in his jaw. I was considering how to respond without humiliating her further in front of her father. It was a reasonable explanation. But something didn't feel right. The same instinct that had warned me about certain customers at the bar when I worked at La Rosa. The sense that someone wasn't being entirely truthful. I need to be alone tonight, I said, watching his face carefully. Anger flashed in his eyes, quickly controlled. You're upset. Understandably so. But isolating yourself isn't the solution. It's not a solution, Dante. It's a request. I held his gaze, refusing to back down. I need space to think. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Dante Salvatore wasn't accustomed to having his wishes denied, especially by those closest to him. But after a long pause, he nodded once. You can use the East Wing guest suite. Not our bedroom, but not sending me away either. A compromise that kept me under his roof, within his reach. I'll have security positioned in the hallway. I don't need guards watching my door. They're not watching you, Sophia. His voice hardened. They're ensuring no one gets to you. Valentina's return has complicated things. Until I'm certain of her intentions and her father's position, extra precautions are necessary. The reality of my situation crashed over me like a wave. This wasn't just relationship drama. It was a potential power struggle between crime families, with me caught in the middle. Fine, I conceded, suddenly exhausted. The East Wing. Dante's expression softened, and he reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. This will pass, Tesoro. By tomorrow, everything will be clearer. But as I walked away from him, toward the solitude of the guest suite, I couldn't shake Valentina's words from my mind. Ask yourself why he chose a bartender when he could have anyone. The second phone in his office safe, Celeste. The woman I had seen tonight was either dangerously unhinged or desperate to communicate some truth she thought I needed to know. And until I knew which, sleep would be impossible. As the security detail fell into step behind me at a respectful distance, I made a decision that sent a shiver of both fear and determination through me. Tonight, While Dante was busy managing the fallout from Valentina's appearance, I would find that second phone. I would discover for myself exactly what kind of man I had agreed to marry. The East Wing guest suite was palatial, like everything in Dante's mansion, but it felt cold, impersonal. The king-sized bed with its Egyptian cotton sheets and the marble bathroom with its rainfall shower were luxuries I had quickly grown accustomed to over the past months. Yet tonight, they felt like part of my gilded cage. Beautiful distractions from the truth I was beginning to suspect lay beneath the surface of my relationship with Dante. I paced the plush carpet, Valentina's words echoing in my mind. Ask him about Celeste. Who was she? Another ex-wife? A lover? Someone from Dante's mysterious past that he'd conveniently failed to mention. From the window, I could see the last of the guests' vehicles leaving through the estate's wrought iron gates. Security personnel patrolled the grounds, their dark figures moving with practiced precision through the landscaped gardens. In the circular driveway, Dante stood with Marco and two other men I recognized as his top lieutenants, heads bent in serious conversation. I knew I had limited time. Once Dante finished handling the fallout from tonight's disaster, he would come looking for me. To explain, to reassure, to reclaim control of the narrative. If I wanted to find that phone, it had to be now. I opened the suite door, peering into the hallway. As promised, 2 security guards stood at attention, one at each end of the corridor. The one nearest my door, Paolo, I remembered, nodded respectfully. Is everything all right, Miss Sophia? Yes, I forced a smile. I forgot my medication in the main bedroom, for anxiety. The lie came easily, surprising me. 6 months ago, I couldn't even call in sick to work without stammering through excuses. Paolo hesitated. I can have someone bring it for you. No, I know exactly where it is. It'll just take a minute. I stepped into the hallway, pulling the suite door closed behind me. Unless Mr. Salvatore left orders that I'm to be confined to that room. A flash of uncertainty crossed Paolo's face. Dante hadn't explicitly forbidden me from moving around the house. That would have been too controlling, too obvious, but the implication had been clear. Of course not, miss. Would you like me to escort you? That won't be necessary, I said quickly. I know my way around my own home. The words felt strange on my tongue. My home. Was it, really? Or was it just another possession of Dante's that I had been permitted to share? Paolo nodded. I'll inform the boss that you've gone to the main bedroom. That gave me a time limit. I needed to be quick. I moved through the east wing toward the grand staircase, my bare feet silent on the polished marble. The mansion was eerily quiet now, the chaos of the party replaced with a heavy stillness that seemed to watch my every move. Instead of heading to the main bedroom, I took a right at the bottom of the stairs, moving toward Dante's private office. My heart pounded against my ribs, each beat a warning. I had never entered this room without Dante present. It was his sanctuary, his command center, off limits to everyone except his most trusted circle, and I was about to violate that trust. The door was locked, of course, but 3 months ago, after a night of too much wine and passionate promises, Dante had shown me where he kept the spare key. In case of emergencies, he'd said. At the time, it had felt like a gesture of trust. Now I wondered if it had been a test. The small decorative box on the hallway console table slid open with a gentle push, revealing the key nestled inside. I glanced over my shoulder, listening for footsteps, before quickly unlocking the office door and slipping inside. Dante's scent hit me immediately. Sandalwood, expensive cologne, and something uniquely him. The room was meticulously organized, dominated by a massive mahogany desk facing the door. Behind it, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Chicago's glittering skyline. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes I suspected were more for appearance than actual reading. I moved to the desk first, my trembling fingers opening drawers, searching for anything that might offer answers. Business documents, contracts with names I didn't recognize, a sleek pistol in the bottom drawer that made my blood run cold. But no phone. The safe, Valentina had said. My eyes scanned the room, landing on the painting to the right of the desk. A dark, moody landscape of the Italian countryside. It was the only piece of art in the otherwise minimalist office, and it hung at perfect eye level. Too obvious, I thought. Dante was smarter than that. I moved to the bookshelf, running my fingers along the spines, looking for anything that seemed out of place. Nothing. The wet bar in the corner was equally unhelpful, as was the small seating area by the window. Time was running out. Paolo would have notified Dante by now, and my absence from the main bedroom would soon raise questions. In desperation, I returned to the desk, dropping to my knees to examine it more closely. That's when I noticed it, a slight difference in the wood grain on one side of the knee space. I pressed my fingers against it, feeling a small depression that yielded under pressure. With a soft click, a hidden panel swung open, revealing a small digital safe. My hand shook as I stared at the keypad. What would Dante use as a code? Our anniversary? Too sentimental. His birthday? Too obvious. I tried the date his father died. A day I knew had shaped him profoundly. Nothing. Then I remembered something Gabriella had mentioned once, about their mother's birthday being Dante's lucky number. I entered the date. 0517. The safe beeped once, and the door swung open. Inside lay several items. A stack of cash in various currencies, a small velvet pouch that clinked with what sounded like diamonds, a passport I suspected wasn't issued by any legitimate government agency. And, my heart lurched, a sleek black phone. I reached for it with trembling fingers, pressing the power button. The screen remained dark. Dead battery? Or turned off for security. I had no way to charge it here, and no time to search for a charger. As I debated what to do, my fingers brushed against something else in the safe. A small leather notebook. I pulled it out, flipping it open to find pages of handwritten notes in Dante's precise script. Most entries were in Italian, which I couldn't read, but some names jumped out at me. Business contacts, politicians, rival family members. And there, on the last used page, Celeste, 3rd Tuesday, 8 p.m., Lake House. My blood ran cold. The lake house was Dante's private retreat, a secluded property an hour outside the city where we had spent several romantic weekends. He had told me he only used it when he needed to escape with me, but this entry suggested otherwise. The 3rd Tuesday of the current month had been just last week, a night Dante had claimed he was in Detroit for business. I quickly took a photo of the page with my phone, then replaced the notebook exactly as I had found it. The black phone went back too, though everything in me wanted to take it. I had just closed the safe and was sliding the panel back into place when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of the office door handle turning. I froze, heart pounding in my throat, as the door swung open to reveal Dante standing in the threshold. For a moment, neither of us spoke. His eyes took in the scene, me kneeling behind his desk, the slight disarray of papers I hadn't managed to perfectly replace, the guilty flush I could feel spreading across my cheeks. "What are you doing in here, Sophia?" His voice was soft, which was somehow more terrifying than if he had shouted. I stood slowly, smoothing down my dress with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. "I was looking for you. In my private office? Behind my desk?" Each word was measured, controlled. The lie died on my lips. Dante could always tell when I was lying. It was one of the things that had initially attracted me to him, his ability to see through people's pretenses, to understand what they really wanted. Only now did I realize how dangerous that ability could be when turned against me. "Paolo said you were going to our bedroom for medication." Dante stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that sounded like a jail cell locking. "Yet here you are, in a room you know is off limits without me." "I needed answers," I said, deciding that partial honesty was my only defense. "After everything that happened tonight, can you blame me?" Dante moved toward me, his steps unhurried, predatory. "And did you find what you were looking for?" I swallowed hard. "Who is Celeste?" Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, followed quickly by anger. "You went through my things." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. That was a mistake, Tesoro. So was lying to me. I met his gaze, refusing to be intimidated, despite the fear coursing through me. "You told me you were in Detroit last Tuesday. But you were at the lake house, weren't you?" With her, Dante's expression gave nothing away. "You shouldn't believe everything Valentina says. She's trying to come between us. I didn't get this from Valentina. I found it in your notebook. I held up my phone, showing him the photo I'd taken. Your handwriting, your schedule. Who is she, Dante? For a long moment, he stared at me, his dark eyes unreadable. Then he sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a rare gesture of frustration I'd seen only a handful of times. Celeste isn't a woman, Sophia. It's a code name for a business venture. What kind of business requires secret meetings at your private lake house? His jaw tightened. The kind of business that keeps us safe, that keeps you living in luxury instead of mixing drinks for minimum wage and tips. The barb stung, reminding me of the vast difference in our backgrounds, in our power. If it's just business, why hide it from me? Why lie about where you were? Because some things are better kept separate from our personal life. He reached for me, his fingers brushing my cheek in a gesture that would have seemed tender, if not for the steel behind his eyes. I don't burden you with the uglier aspects of what I do. That's a protection, not a deception. I wanted to believe him, part of me, the part that had fallen for his intensity, his confidence, his singular focus on me, desperately wanted to accept this explanation and return to the fantasy of our life together. But Valentina's words echoed in my mind. Ask him about Celeste. Show me the phone, I said suddenly. Dante's hand stilled against my skin. What? The second phone, the one in your safe. If Celeste is just business, then show me the phone. Prove Valentina wrong. His expression hardened. I don't have to prove anything to you. Actually, you do. I stepped back from his touch. If you want me to marry you, if you want me to trust you, you have to start being honest with me. All of it, Dante. Not just the parts you think I can handle. For a moment, I thought I'd pushed too far. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes, a glimpse of the man his enemies feared, not the lover I thought I knew. Then, without a word, he moved past me to the desk. I watched as he pressed the hidden panel, entered the code, and opened the safe. When he turned back to me, he held the black phone in his hand. Here, he said, offering it to me. See for yourself. I took it, surprised by his sudden capitulation. The phone was sleek, expensive, not unlike his primary device. I pressed the power button, and to my surprise, it came to life immediately. Not dead after all, just turned off. The screen prompted for a passcode. 0517, Dante said quietly, the same as the safe. I entered the digits, and the phone unlocked, revealing a sparse home screen with only a few apps. Messaging, phone, photos, and notes. No social media, no games, nothing personal at all. With Dante watching, I opened the messaging app. There were only a few conversations, all with contacts listed by single initials or code names. I tapped on C and found a series of short, cryptic exchanges. Shipment secured, transit as planned, new terms acceptable, paperwork with attorney, meeting confirmed, lake house, security protocols in effect. I scrolled through more messages, all similarly vague, all clearly related to business dealings of some kind. Nothing romantic, nothing personal, nothing to suggest Celeste was a woman Dante was seeing behind my back. Satisfied? Dante asked, his voice neutral. I handed the phone back to him, feeling simultaneously relieved and foolish. Why all the secrecy, the code names, the second phone? My business operates in gray areas, Sophia. You know this. Once he returned the phone to the safe and closed it. The less that can be traced to me directly, the safer we all are. And Rome? I asked, remembering Valentina's other accusation. Were you there 6 months ago? Dante leaned against the desk, studying me. No. I was here in Chicago, the night I met you. She seemed so certain. Valentina has convinced herself of many things that aren't true. His expression softened slightly. After she lost the baby, after the divorce, she struggled. Drugs, alcohol, delusions. I tried to help, but she refused me at every turn. And now she's pregnant, I said. With someone else's child. Yes. Dante pushed off from the desk, moving toward me again, and using that child to try to claw her way back into a life that no longer exists. A life I've rebuilt. With you. His hands found my waist, drawing me closer. Despite everything, my body responded to his touch, to the familiar heat between us. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about her," he murmured, his lips brushing my temple. "I wanted to leave the past in the past. Start fresh with you. No more secrets," I whispered, wanting to believe we could move forward from this night. "Promise me." "No more secrets," he agreed, though something in his tone made me wonder if he was being entirely truthful. But I was tired, physically, emotionally exhausted from the night's revelations. And Dante's arms felt safe, despite everything. A harbor in the storm Valentina had brought crashing into our lives. As he led me from the office back toward our main bedroom, not the guest suite, a silent acknowledgement that we would not be separated tonight, I pushed my doubts aside. The phone had shown nothing suspicious. Dante had given a reasonable explanation for the lake house meetings. Perhaps Valentina truly was delusional, driven by jealousy and bitterness to try to destroy what Dante and I had built. Yet as we passed a window overlooking the front gates, I noticed a black sedan still parked just outside, engine running. Vincenzo Russo's car, waiting in the shadows like a predator biding its time. This wasn't over. Whatever game Valentina was playing, whatever her true motivations, tonight had been only the opening move. And as I slipped between the silk sheets of Dante's bed, our bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial, something that might change everything if only I could see it clearly. I curled against Dante's warm body as he pulled me close, his breath evening out as he drifted toward sleep. But my eyes remained open, staring into the darkness, replaying Valentina's desperate warnings. Ask him about Celeste, check his phone. I had done both, and found nothing to confirm her accusations. Yet the doubt remained, a small, persistent voice whispering that perhaps I had seen only what Dante wanted me to see, that the truth, like so much in his world, might be hidden beneath layers of careful deception. As sleep finally claimed me, one certainty remained. I loved this man beside me, this complex, dangerous, possessive man who had swept me from my ordinary life into his extraordinary one. But for the first time since we'd met, I wasn't sure if I could trust him. Morning came with the soft golden light filtering through the custom blinds Dante had installed, designed to wake us gradually, gently. One of his many thoughtful touches. I reached across the bed, finding only cool sheets where his body should have been. "Dante?" I called, sitting up. The bedroom door opened, but instead of Dante, Gabriella entered, carrying a tray with coffee and pastries. Her expression was carefully composed, but I could see the tension around her eyes. "Good morning," she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "I thought you might be hungry. Where's Dante?" I asked, accepting the coffee she offered. Handling the situation, Gabriella perched on the edge of the bed. Valentina's appearance last night complicated things. The events of the previous evening came rushing back. The party, the confrontation, my discovery in Dante's office. What does that mean, exactly? Handling the situation? Gabriella hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell me. Vincenzo Russo isn't just Valentina's father. He controls significant portions of the import business on the East Coast. His alliance with our family has kept certain competitive pressures at bay. And now that alliance is threatened because of me, I said, understanding dawning. Not because of you. She touched my hand. Because Valentina can't accept that Dante has moved on, that he's happy. I took a sip of coffee, buying time to organize my thoughts. Am I in danger? The question hung between us, heavy with implications. In the months since I'd entered Dante's world, I had maintained a careful distance from the realities of his business. I knew, in an abstract way, what the Salvatore family was involved in. But I had never directly confronted the violence that lurked beneath the surface of their power. Dante would never let anything happen to you, Gabriella said finally. You're under his protection. Not a no, I noted. That doesn't answer my question. She sighed. Valentina is unstable, unpredictable, and she blames you for taking what she believes should still be hers. But Dante said they've been divorced for 2 years. Surely she's moved on too. It's not that simple. Gabriella's eyes met mine. In our world, marriages aren't just about love. They're about alliances, power, continuation of family lines. Dante was the heir to the Salvatore Empire. By marrying him, Valentina secured her family's position and her own future. When he divorced her, he took that security away, I finished. And now she wants it back. Yes. And a child, a Salvatore heir, would strengthen her claims significantly. I set my coffee down, suddenly losing my appetite. But Dante says the baby isn't his. It doesn't matter what's true. It matters what people believe. Gabriella's voice had taken on an edge I rarely heard from her. Perception is reality in our world, Sophia. If enough people believe Valentina's story, then Dante's position is weakened. The realization hit me with chilling clarity. And so is mine. She nodded. Which is why he's meeting with Vincenzo now, to resolve this before it escalates further. I should be there, I said, throwing back the covers. If this involves me, I have a right to be part of the conversation. Gabriella caught my arm. Dante gave explicit instructions that you're to remain here, where it's safe. I'm not one of his soldiers, Gabriella. I pulled away from her grasp. I'm supposed to be his partner, and as his partner, you need to trust him to handle this. Her voice softened. Please, Sophia, don't make this more difficult than it already is. I wanted to argue, to demand my place at Dante's side, but something in Gabriella's expression stopped me. Fear, I realized. Not for herself, but for me. What aren't you telling me? I asked quietly. She looked away, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her blouse. Valentina tried to kill herself after the divorce. When that didn't bring Dante back, she tried to have him killed. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. What? She hired a hitman, an amateur, thankfully. He approached one of Dante's men instead, looking for inside information on Dante's schedule. He was dealt with. Gabriella's voice had gone clinical, detached. Valentina spent 6 months in a private psychiatric facility afterward. Her father convinced Dante not to retaliate further, given her mental state. My mind reeled with this new information. And now she's back, pregnant, claiming the child is Dante's. Yes. Gabriella met my gaze again, which is why you need to stay here, protected, until Dante resolves this. I sank back onto the bed, trying to process everything. The woman I had seen last night, elegant, composed, articulate, had tried to have Dante killed, had been institutionalized, and was now inserting herself back into our lives, making claims that threatened everything Dante and I had built together. What does Dante think she wants? I asked finally. Money, most likely. Recognition of the child as a Salvatore, which would entitle both her and the baby to family resources and protection. Gabriella shrugged. Or perhaps it's simpler than that. Perhaps she just wants to hurt him as she believes he hurt her. By taking away what he loved. By targeting me. The thought sent a chill through me, despite the warm sunlight streaming through the windows. I need to see him, I said, standing again. Now. Gabriella opened her mouth to object, then seemed to think better of it. Get dressed. I'll take you to him. But Sophia, her eyes held a warning. Be prepared. This side of our world, it's not like the charity galas and society parties you've seen so far. I nodded, understanding what she wasn't saying. I was about to step fully into the darkness that Dante had tried to shield me from. The real business of the Salvatore family. Once I crossed that threshold, there would be no going back to blissful ignorance. As I dressed in a simple black sheath dress, armor of a sort, I wondered if this was what Valentina had meant. If this was how it had started for her too. Being drawn deeper and deeper into Dante's world, until she couldn't distinguish where he ended and she began, until his enemies became hers, his darkness seeped into her soul. But I wasn't Valentina, and as I followed Gabriella through the mansion toward whatever confrontation awaited, I promised myself I never would be. Gabriella led me through parts of the mansion I had rarely visited, down a service elevator, through a corridor where armed men nodded respectfully as we passed, and finally to a heavy wooden door reinforced with steel. The basement level, I realized. Dante's real office, not the elegant facade he maintained upstairs. She paused, her hand on the electronic keypad beside the door. Last chance to turn back, Sophia. Some things once seen can't be unseen. I need to know what I'm walking into, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. All of it, not just the parts Dante thinks I can handle. Something like respect flickered in her eyes. She entered a code, and the door unlocked with a soft click. The room beyond was surprisingly modern. Gleaming concrete floors, recessed lighting, and sleek technology that contrasted sharply with the old-world opulence of the mansion above. A long conference table dominated the space, around which sat Dante, and 4 men I recognized as his top lieutenants. At the opposite end, Vincenzo Russo sat alone, his silver hair immaculate, his posture relaxed despite being in the heart of Salvatore territory. All conversation ceased as we entered. Dante's eyes locked with mine, a storm brewing in their dark depths. Sophia. My name on his lips was both a question and a warning. You shouldn't be here. I think she absolutely should. Vincenzo's voice carried an aristocratic Italian lilt that belied the danger he represented. After all, she is central to our discussion. Dante's jaw tightened, but he didn't contradict the older man. Gabriella, you were instructed to keep Sophia upstairs. She deserves to hear this, Gabriella said, her hand squeezing mine briefly before she took a seat beside one of Dante's men. I remained standing, suddenly aware of how out of place I looked. A bartender from the wrong side of town, surrounded by people who had been born into this world of power and danger. Please, sit. Vincenzo gestured to an empty chair beside Dante. We were just discussing terms. Terms for what? I asked, moving to the indicated seat. Dante's hand found mine beneath the table, his grip almost painful in its intensity. A warning to let him handle this, or reassurance. I couldn't tell. Compensation, Vincenzo replied smoothly, for my daughter's distress. Extortion, Dante corrected, his voice cold, based on lies. Vincenzo spread his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Whether you believe Valentina's claims about the child's paternity is irrelevant. The fact remains that your engagement, so soon after your divorce to a woman of, shall we say, humble origins, has caused my daughter considerable emotional suffering. My cheeks burned at the implied insult, but I kept my expression neutral, mimicking the control I had observed in Dante countless times. Your daughter showed up uninvited to our engagement party, I said, ignoring Dante's subtle pressure on my hand, warning me to remain silent. Made a scene, made accusations, and threatened to disrupt our lives. If anyone deserves compensation for emotional distress, it's us. Vincenzo's eyebrows rose slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his features before his mask of civility returned. You have spirit, Ms. Reyes. I can see why Dante finds you amusing. Sophia isn't part of this negotiation, Dante cut in, his voice leaving no room for argument. This is between our families. But that's just it, isn't it? Vincenzo leaned forward, his eyes never leaving my face. She isn't family, not yet, not officially, which makes her position precarious. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Careful, Vincenzo. Dante's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. You're in my house. The older man smiled, unfazed. And you're endangering a 20-year alliance over a bartender. Is she worth it, I wonder? Before Dante could respond, I leaned forward, meeting Vincenzo's gaze directly. What does Valentina really want? Because if it's money, name your price and let's end this circus. But if it's Dante, I squeezed his hand under the table. She can't have him. A look of genuine amusement crossed Vincenzo's face. Forthright. Refreshing. He turned to Dante. You've found yourself a lioness, Salvatore. I hope you know how to control her. Nobody controls me, I said, my patience wearing thin. Not Dante, and certainly not you or your daughter, so what will it take for this to be over? Vincenzo studied me for a long moment, then sighed. 10 million. Transferred to an offshore account, acknowledgement of the child as a Salvatore, with all rights and protections that entails. And a public statement from Dante expressing regret for the hasty nature of your engagement, which has clearly caused distress to his former wife. Absolutely not. Dante's voice was ice. I won't claim a child that isn't mine. I won't apologize for loving Sophia, and I sure as hell won't pay Valentina for her delusions. Then, perhaps we are at an impasse. Vincenzo stood, buttoning his immaculate suit jacket. A shame. Wars have started over less. Wait. I placed a restraining hand on Dante's arm as he made to rise. What proof does Valentina have that the baby is Dante's? Vincenzo's eyes glittered. She claims they were together in Rome 6 months ago. A night of reconciliation, shall we say. The timing aligns with her pregnancy. Dante wasn't in Rome 6 months ago, I said confidently, remembering our conversation in the garden. He was here in Chicago, the night we met. So he says. Vincenzo shrugged. Yet my daughter describes in great detail their dinner at Il Pagliaccio, their walk along the Tiber, their return to his hotel suite at the St. Regis. She even recalls the specific bottle of wine they shared, a 1982 Brunello from his father's private collection. I felt Dante stiffen beside me, a subtle reaction that wouldn't have been noticeable to anyone who didn't know him as intimately as I did. She's lying, he said. But something had changed in his voice, a microscopic hesitation that sent ice through my veins. Is she? Vincenzo looked genuinely curious. My daughter may have her faults, but her memory has always been exceptional. Especially for details that others might prefer forgotten. Enough. Dante stood, ending the discussion. You've made your demands. I've given my answer. We're done here. For now. Vincenzo moved toward the door, pausing beside me. Ms. Reyes, a word of advice from someone who has navigated these waters for longer than you've been alive. Ask to see his passport stamps. The truth leaves traces, even when men like Dante try to erase them. And then he was gone, escorted out by 2 of Dante's security men, leaving behind a silence thick with unspoken questions. Dante turned to his lieutenants. Give us the room. They filed out without protest, Gabriella squeezing my shoulder as she passed. Comfort or warning, I couldn't tell. When the door closed behind them, Dante and I were alone in the concrete fortress of his true domain. You shouldn't have come down here, he said, his back to me as he poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter. Were you going to tell me about the negotiations? About Valentina trying to have you killed? About any of this? I accepted the glass he offered, needing its burn to steady my nerves. I was protecting you. You were controlling me, I corrected. There's a difference. Dante's eyes flashed. You have no idea what Vincenzo is capable of. What he would do to get what he wants. And what about what Valentina said? About Rome? He took a slow sip of whiskey, his expression unreadable. She's lying. Fabricating details to strengthen her claim. Then why did you react when Vincenzo mentioned the wine? I pressed, watching his face carefully. A 1982 Brunello from your father's collection. Dante set his glass down with deliberate care. Because my father did have that wine in his collection. It was one of his prized possessions. Valentina would know that from our marriage. But you weren't in Rome. No. His eyes met mine. I was here, meeting you. I wanted to believe him. Everything in me craved the certainty I'd felt before Valentina crashed into our lives, but doubt had taken root, growing with each new revelation, each careful denial. Show me your passport, I said suddenly, remembering Vincenzo's parting shot. Dante went completely still. What? Your passport. If you weren't in Rome 6 months ago, your passport won't have an Italian entry stamp from that time. This is absurd. I don't have to prove myself to you. Actually, you do. I stepped closer to him, refusing to be intimidated. If we're going to build a life together, if I'm going to stand by you against people like Vincenzo and Valentina, then I need to know I'm not being played. For a long moment, Dante simply looked at me, his expression inscrutable. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew his phone, tapping out a message. What are you doing? I asked. Having Marco bring my passport. His voice was flat. Since my word apparently isn't enough for you anymore. The accusation stung, but I stood my ground. This isn't about trust, Dante. It's about truth. They're the same thing in my world. We waited in tense silence until a knock at the door announced Marco's arrival. He entered, handed Dante a small leather folio, and left without a word, his eyes carefully avoiding mine. Dante placed the passport on the conference table between us. Go ahead. Satisfy your curiosity. With hands that weren't quite steady, I opened the passport, flipping through pages of entry and exit stamps from various countries. I found the section covering 6 months ago and examined it carefully. No Italian entry stamps for the week Valentina claimed they were together. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by shame for having doubted him. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No, he cut me off. You shouldn't have. He took the passport back, tucking it into his jacket. Is there anything else you'd like me to prove? Bank statements? Security footage? Or is my innocence finally established to your satisfaction? Dante. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. You don't understand what you've done, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. By coming down here, by questioning me in front of Vincenzo, you've undermined my authority, shown weakness at the worst possible moment. I wasn't trying to undermine you. I was trying to stand with you. In my world, appearances matter. Respect matters. Control matters. His eyes burned into mine. I've spent years building what I have, Sophia, creating a life, a legacy, a future that I wanted to share with you. And in one night, you've put all of that at risk. The unfairness of his accusation ignited my anger. I put it at risk? Not Valentina showing up making claims about your child, not you hiding your marriage from me, not the fact that you've kept me in a bubble, shielded from the reality of your life, your business, your past. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself, I shot back, keeping me ignorant, compliant, dependent on you for everything, even information about the man I'm supposed to marry. Dante's expression hardened into something I barely recognized. Is that what you think of me? That I've been manipulating you? I don't know what to think anymore. I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. I thought I knew you. I thought what we had was real, but ever since Valentina appeared, it's like I'm seeing a different version of you. A version that keeps secrets, that calculates every move, that views me as something to be managed rather than loved. For a moment, something like pain flashed across his features. Then it was gone, replaced by the cool mask he presented to the world. Perhaps you're right, he said finally. Perhaps I have kept too much from you. Tried too hard to preserve the life we were building by keeping it separate from this. He gestured to the room around us, to the concrete fortress where the real business of the Salvatore family transpired. I don't need protection from the truth, Dante. I need honesty. Complete honesty. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. Complete honesty. He took a deep breath. I was in Rome 6 months ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Not for the reasons Valentina claims, he added quickly. I was there for a meeting with the Genovese family, a business arrangement that needed to be handled personally. But your passport. I have multiple passports, Sophia. Multiple identities. In my business, it's a necessity. My mind reeled with the implications. So you lied to me about Rome, about being in Chicago the night we met. No, he moved toward me, his expression intense. I flew back from Rome the day before I came to La Rosa. I was in Chicago when I met you. That part is true. But the rest? About not seeing Valentina? Dante's jaw tightened. I did see her in Rome. She found me. How, I still don't know. Showed up at my hotel claiming she wanted to talk, to find closure. And did you? Talk? I could barely get the words out, dreading his answer. Yes. His eyes held mine. We had dinner. I listened to her apologies, her explanations, and then I put her in a car and sent her back to her father's house. You expect me to believe that after you lied about being in Rome at all? It's the truth. He knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in his. I didn't tell you because it didn't matter. Because she didn't matter. I met you the next day, and everything changed. I wanted to believe him, but the foundation of trust had been cracked, and I wasn't sure if it could be repaired. And the baby? Not mine, he said firmly. Whatever Valentina claims, whatever details she's fabricated, I never slept with her that night. Never touched her beyond a goodbye on the cheek. Then why is she doing this? Why now? Dante's expression darkened. Because she heard about our engagement. Because she can't stand the thought of me building a family with someone else after what happened to ours. Because she's desperate and dangerous and will use anything, including an innocent child, to get what she wants. It made sense. Or at least, it was a version of events that I could accept, that aligned with the man I thought I knew. Yet doubt lingered, whispering that there might be more to the story, more secrets beneath the surface. "I need time," I said finally. "Time to process all of this, to decide if I can trust you again." Something like panic flickered in Dante's eyes. "Time isn't a luxury we have right now, Tesoro. Vincenzo has made his move. He's waiting to see how I respond." "That's your business to handle, not mine. You're wrong." His grip on my hands tightened. "You became part of this the moment Valentina targeted you, the moment Vincenzo saw you as a weakness to exploit. So what now?" I asked, pulling my hands from his grasp. "You pay her off? Claim a child that isn't yours? Or start a war with her family? None of the above." Dante stood, decision hardening his features. "I'm going to prove the child isn't mine. Publicly, irrefutably. And then I'm going to make sure Valentina never threatens us again." The cold determination in his voice sent a chill through me. "What does that mean, exactly?" "It means I'm done being reactive. Done letting her control the narrative." He pulled out his phone, issuing rapid instructions to someone on the other end. When he finished, he turned back to me. "I have people searching for Valentina's medical records, for evidence of who she's really been seeing, for anything we can use to discredit her claims. And if you find nothing, we will." His confidence was absolute. "Everyone has secrets, Sophia. Even Valentina." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. "Like you?" His eyes met mine, unblinking. "I've told you everything now. No more secrets." But I wasn't sure I believed him anymore. The man I had fallen in love with. The man who had swept me off my feet with his intensity, his devotion, his singular focus on making me the center of his world, seemed increasingly like a carefully crafted persona, designed to show me only what he wanted me to see. "I need air," I said, standing abruptly. "I need to think." "Sophia." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I held up a hand. "Just give me space. Please." For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Dante Salvatore wasn't accustomed to being denied anything he wanted, least of all by me. But after a tense pause, he nodded once. "Take the East Wing. You'll have privacy there. But Sophia," his voice hardened, "don't leave the estate. It isn't safe." I wanted to argue, to assert my independence, to remind him that he didn't control me. But the rational part of my brain recognized the truth in his warning. If Valentina was as unstable as they claimed, if Vincenzo was as dangerous as Dante feared, then I was safest within these walls, even if they suddenly felt more like a prison than a home. I left the underground room without another word, making my way back through the mansion that had become my gilded cage. As I passed through the grand foyer, my eyes fell on the massive portrait of Dante's parents that dominated the space. Salvatore royalty, their expressions confident, commanding, secure in their power and position. Is this what Dante wanted for us? For me to stand beside him in a portrait someday, the next generation of a dynasty built on secrets and control. Was that the future I was walking into with my eyes wide open? Or was I as blind as Valentina had once been? In the East Wing guest suite, I sank onto the bed, my mind racing with everything I had learned. Dante's lies about Rome, Valentina's claims about the baby, Vincenzo's veiled threats, the revelation of just how deep the darkness ran in Dante's world. My phone buzzed with a text from Gabriella. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" I stared at the screen, wondering how to answer. Was I okay? Would I ever be okay again, now that I had glimpsed the reality of the life I had so eagerly accepted? Before I could respond, another text came through, this one from an unknown number. The truth has a way of revealing itself. Dante's Lake House, tonight, 8 p.m. Come alone if you want answers. V. Valentina. Somehow she had gotten my number, was reaching out directly, circumventing Dante's security, his control. I should delete it, should tell Dante immediately, should trust the man I loved over a woman I had just met, a woman who by all accounts was unstable, vindictive, desperate. Instead, I found myself responding, "How do I know this isn't a trap?" The reply came seconds later, "You don't. But ask yourself this, Which is more dangerous, hearing what I have to say, or remaining ignorant in Dante's golden cage until it's too late to escape? My fingers hovered over the phone, indecision paralyzing me. The rational choice was clear. Tell Dante. Let him handle Valentina. Trust that he was telling me the truth despite the evidence of his deceptions. But another part of me, the part that had always relied on my instincts during late nights at La Rosa, the part that had kept me safe in a world that often preyed on women like me, whispered that I needed to know, needed to hear Valentina's side of the story, needed to make my own decision based on all the facts, not just the version Dante chose to share. "I'll be there," I typed before I could change my mind. As I set the phone down, my gaze fell on the diamond engagement ring sparkling on my finger, the symbol of everything Dante and I had built together, everything that was now at risk. With trembling fingers, I slipped it off, placing it on the nightstand. Tonight, I would meet Valentina alone. I would hear what she had to say. And then I would decide, once and for all, if the life Dante Salvatore offered was one I could truly share. Because as much as I loved him, and God help me, I did love him, despite everything. I refused to become another Valentina. Broken by secrets, driven to desperation, trapped in a cage of someone else's making. Whatever happened at the lake house tonight would determine not just my future with Dante, but my future, period. And for the first time since I'd met him, I was prepared to face that future on my own terms, with or without the man who had both awakened and endangered my heart. Leaving the estate undetected proved easier than I expected. Dante had been called away to an emergency meeting with his lieutenants, and Gabriella was occupied with damage control among their social circle after the previous night's disaster. The security detail, while vigilant against external threats, wasn't accustomed to preventing someone from leaving, especially not the boss's fiancé. I told Paolo I needed fresh air, a drive to clear my head. He hesitated only briefly before arranging for a car. "Mr. Salvatore wouldn't want you going alone, Miss Sophia. I'll take Marco," I lied smoothly, naming Dante's most trusted security man, knowing he was with Dante. "He's meeting me out front." The deception worked. 20 minutes later, I was behind the wheel of one of Dante's less conspicuous vehicles, a sleek black Audi rather than the customary Bentley, navigating the roads north of Chicago toward the lake house. Guilt gnawed at me with each mile, but determination pushed me forward. I needed answers, even if finding them meant betraying Dante's trust. The lake house sat on 3 acres of private shoreline, isolated from neighboring properties by dense woods and strategic land purchases. As I turned onto the private road leading to it, the sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows through the trees. The golden light reflected off the lake's surface, creating an illusion of warmth, despite the chill that had settled in my bones. I parked in front of the modernist structure of glass and stone, a place where Dante and I had shared passionate weekends, lazy mornings, whispered promises of a future together. Now it felt like unfamiliar territory, tainted by secrets and lies. Valentina's silver Mercedes was already there, parked at a careful distance from the house. A strategic choice, I realized, easily visible from the road, but positioned for a quick exit if necessary. I checked my phone one last time. No messages from Dante, which meant he hadn't yet discovered my absence. That would change soon enough. I had maybe an hour before all hell broke loose. Taking a deep breath, I approached the house. The front door opened before I could knock, revealing Valentina silhouetted against the warm interior light. Up close, without the chaos of the previous night, I could fully appreciate her beauty. The kind that came from good genes and better surgeons, maintained through rigorous discipline. "You came alone." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "Smart girl. Come in." I followed her into the living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the lake. She had made herself comfortable. A glass of what looked like sparkling water sat on the coffee table, and her designer bag was placed carefully on the sofa. "Dante will figure out I'm gone soon," I said, remaining standing while she settled gracefully onto the couch. "So whatever you have to say it now." Valentina studied me with eyes that missed nothing. "You're not wearing your ring." I glanced down at my bare finger, feeling strangely exposed. It didn't seem appropriate, given the circumstances. A small, knowing smile curved her lips. You're starting to understand then. Understand what? What kind of man you're really dealing with. She gestured to the seat across from her. Please, sit. This conversation will be easier if we're both comfortable. Reluctantly, I perched on the edge of the chair, keeping my back straight, my guard up. I came for answers, Valentina, not mind games. Fair enough. She took a sip of her water, her movements deliberate and graceful. Ask your questions. Is the baby Dante's? The most important question first. Her hand moved to her stomach, a protective gesture that seemed instinctual rather than calculated. Yes. He says he wasn't with you in Rome, that you had dinner, nothing more. He's lying. Her response was immediate, certain. We spent the night together at the St. Regis. He ordered the 1982 Brunello from room service, his father's favorite. We reminisced about the good times, before everything fell apart. I wanted to dismiss her words as fabrications, but doubt crept in, remembering Dante's hesitation when confronted, his admission that he had been in Rome after initially denying it. Why would he deny his own child, I asked, watching her face carefully for signs of deception. Pain flashed in her eyes, genuine or a masterful performance. Because acknowledging this baby would complicate the narrative he's created with you. The fresh start, the clean slate. Her voice took on a bitter edge. Dante excels at rewriting history to suit his purposes, like the history between you two, the divorce, the reason for it. Did he tell you I was unstable? That I tried to have him killed? She laughed, the sound hollow. Of course he did. It's his favorite story. And it's not true? Valentina's expression hardened. The instability was real. After losing our baby in Istanbul, after Dante's coldness, his focus on business while I was drowning in grief. Yes, I spiraled. Drugs, alcohol, anything to numb the pain. And the hitman? A fabrication. Her eyes held mine. Convenient, wasn't it? A perfect excuse to divorce the broken wife, to wash his hands of his responsibilities, to walk away with his reputation intact while I was labeled crazy, dangerous. I studied her, searching for tells, for hints of the deception Dante had warned me about. But all I saw was a woman carrying pain like a familiar companion, worn into her features over years of bearing it. Why come back now? I asked. If what you're saying is true, why seek him out in Rome at all? I didn't. She shook her head. He found me. Called out of the blue, said he needed to discuss something important related to his father's estate. Business matters that required my signature as his former wife. I should have known better, but what? But part of me still loved him. The admission seemed to cost her something. Still believed there was good in him, beneath all the darkness. I understood that feeling all too well. The magnetic pull of Dante Salvatore. The desire to believe in the version of him that he presented to those he claimed to love. So you met him in Rome, I prompted. Yes. Dinner first, business discussion, then drinks at his hotel, and then... She gestured to her belly. A moment of weakness, a night of pretending the past hadn't happened. A mistake I'm now paying for in ways I never imagined. When did you find out you were pregnant? 2 months ago. She reached into her bag, pulling out what looked like a sonogram image. I tried to contact him. Calls, texts, emails. All ignored or blocked. It was like Rome had never happened. And then you heard about our engagement, I guessed. Valentina's laugh was bitter. Imagine my surprise. The father of my unborn child, engaged to a bartender he'd known for mere months, while I couldn't even get him to return a phone call about his baby. The contempt in her voice when she said bartender stung, but I pushed past it. You could have approached him privately. Instead, you chose to make a public scene. I tried private approaches. They failed. Her eyes hardened. Dante only responds to power plays, to public pressure, to threats to his carefully constructed image. So yes, I chose the nuclear option. I had to. She pushed the sonogram across the coffee table toward me. I hesitated, then picked it up, studying the grainy image of a tiny human. Innocent, unknowing of the drama surrounding its existence. Why should I believe you? I asked, setting the image down. Dante says you're delusional, dangerous. His sister says you tried to kill yourself after the divorce. That part is true. Valentina's voice quieted. I did try to end my life, once. When the grief and isolation became too much to bear. And now you're better? Now I have something to live for. Her hand returned to her stomach. Someone who needs me to be strong. To fight for what's right. I wanted to believe her. Parts of her story aligned with what I had learned about Dante. His careful control of information, his selective truths, his ability to construct narratives that served his purposes. But something still felt off, a piece missing from the puzzle. If what you're saying is true, I said slowly, then why come to me? Why not take this to the press, to Dante's business associates, to people who could actually pressure him? Because you deserve to know who you're really marrying. Her gaze was direct, unflinching. Because I was you once, young, in love, believing I could have a normal life with an extraordinary man. I know how this story ends, Sophia. I've lived it. And how does it end? With you broken, isolated, controlled, until one day, when you're no longer useful or compliant enough, he discards you and moves on to someone new. Her voice cracked slightly. I couldn't save myself, but maybe I can save you. The sincerity in her voice was compelling, her pain palpable, yet doubt lingered. This could all be an elaborate manipulation, a desperate woman's attempt to reclaim what she had lost, using me as leverage against the man who had moved on without her. I need proof, I said finally. Something concrete that shows Dante has been lying about Rome, about you, about everything. Valentina's eyes lit with something like triumph. She reached for her phone, tapped the screen a few times, then handed it to me. This was taken the morning after, as Dante was leaving the St. Regis. Check the date stamp. The photo showed Dante in a tailored suit, exiting the hotel's ornate doorway. His expression was relaxed, satisfied. The look I had seen countless times after a night in his arms. The timestamp aligned perfectly with the dates in question, 6 months ago. This proves he was there, I said, handing back the phone. Not that anything happened between you. There's more. She swiped to another image, Dante and Valentina together in what appeared to be a hotel room, wine glasses in hand, his arm around her waist, both smiling, intimate. The hotel staff took this when they delivered the Brunello. Again, check the timestamp. I stared at the image, a cold certainty settling in my stomach. Dante had lied, not just about being in Rome, but about what had happened there. The man in this photo wasn't meeting an ex-wife for a polite business dinner. He was reconnecting with a woman he had history with, chemistry with. If he lied about this, Valentina said softly, what else has he lied about? The hitman? The reason for our divorce? His business in Istanbul that got our baby killed? My head spun with implications, with questions I had never thought to ask. I need to go, I said suddenly, standing. I need to think. There's one more thing you should see before you leave. Valentina reached into her bag again, this time withdrawing a small black notebook that looked hauntingly familiar. Found this in his safe at the lake house. The combination was still our wedding date. My breath caught. That's Dante's notebook. One of many, she confirmed. But this one is special. It contains names, dates, records of meetings that never officially happened. Including Celeste? The name slipped out before I could stop it. Valentina's expression darkened. So you know about her. I know the name, I admitted. Dante claims it's a code name for a business operation. Open it, she said, handing me the notebook. Page 43. With trembling fingers, I turned to the indicated page. There, in Dante's precise handwriting, was a detailed entry. Celeste. Pregnancy confirmed. Arrangements made for care through term. Child to be placed with approved family after birth. Monthly payments of $50,000 to continue until confidentiality agreement expires. 18 years. The date of the entry was from last year, long before I had met Dante, but well after his divorce from Valentina. Who is Celeste? I asked, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. One of his mistresses, a model from Brazil. Valentina's voice was matter of fact, stripped of emotion. She got pregnant. Dante paid her to give up the baby, to disappear, to maintain absolute secrecy. This could be about anything, I argued weakly. A business arrangement, Stop lying to yourself. Valentina's voice sharpened. You know what this is. What he is. And the terrible thing was, I did know. Deep down, beneath the layers of love and hope and willful blindness, I had always sensed the darkness in Dante. Not just the necessary darkness of his business, but a moral void that allowed him to reshape reality to suit his needs, to discard people when they became inconvenient, to buy loyalty and silence with his immense wealth and power. Why show me all this? I asked, closing the notebook. What do you want from me? I want you to walk away, Valentina said simply, before you end up like me, or worse, like Celeste, paid off and discarded, your child raised by strangers, your life forever shadowed by Dante Salvatore's influence. And if I do walk away, what happens to you and your baby? Her hand instinctively covered her stomach again. I'll keep fighting for what's right, for my child to be acknowledged, protected. I believed her. Despite everything Dante had told me about her instability, her vindictiveness, I believed that Valentina was, at her core, a mother protecting her child. Fighting for recognition that Dante seemed determined to deny. The sound of tires on gravel outside interrupted our conversation. Through the window, I saw black SUVs pulling up, Dante's security detail. We had been discovered. They found us, I said, standing abruptly. You need to leave. Now. Valentina remained seated, surprisingly calm. I'm not afraid of Dante anymore. You should be. I moved to the window, watching as armed men exited the vehicles. He knows I'm here with you. He'll assume the worst. Let him. She stood finely, gathering her belongings with unhurried precision. I have nothing left to lose, Sophia. Do you? The question hung between us as the front door burst open. Marco entered first, gun drawn, scanning the room before fixing his eyes on me. Ms. Sophia. His professional mask slipped, revealing genuine concern. Are you all right? I'm fine, I assured him. We were just talking. More security personnel filed in, creating a perimeter around the room. And then Dante appeared, his expression a storm of emotions, relief, anger, betrayal, when he saw me standing unharmed beside Valentina. Sophia. My name on his lips was both a prayer and an accusation. What have you done? What you wouldn't, I replied, standing my ground. Found the truth. His eyes darted to Valentina, to the notebook in my hand, understanding dawning. Whatever she's told you, is it true about Celeste? I cut him off, needing to hear it from him directly. Did you pay her to give up your baby, to disappear? The room went deadly silent. Even Dante's men seemed to hold their breath, waiting for his response. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, confusion crossed his features. Then understanding, followed by a cold calculation I had seen when he negotiated business deals. Celeste was a mistake, he said finally, his voice controlled. A complication that needed to be handled discreetly. A complication. I repeated the word, testing its weight, its horrible implications. That's what you call your own child? It wasn't like that. He stepped toward me, but I backed away. The situation was complex. The timing was wrong. My position, my responsibilities to the family, your image. I finished for him. Your perfect narrative. You don't understand the world I operate in, he said, his voice hardening. The sacrifices required, the decisions that must be made. I understand enough. I placed the notebook on the coffee table, alongside my engagement ring that I had brought with me but hadn't worn. I understand that you've lied to me from the beginning. About Rome. About Valentina. About Celeste. About who you really are. Sophia, please. He reached for me again, genuine desperation in his eyes. We can work through this. I can explain everything. Like you explained about not being in Rome? About never sleeping with Valentina after your divorce? I shook my head. I'm done with explanations, Dante. Done with half-truths and carefully edited versions of reality. His expression hardened, the vulnerability vanishing behind the mask of the mafia boss. You're making a mistake. No. I moved past him toward the door. The mistake was believing I could build a life with someone whose foundation is built on lies. "If you walk out that door," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "there's no coming back." I paused, turning to face him one last time. "I know." Marco stepped aside to let me pass, his expression carefully neutral, though something like respect flickered in his eyes. As I reached the doorway, Valentina's voice stopped me. "Sophia." When I turned, she held out a small white business card. "My lawyer's information. If Dante or his men ever bother you, call this number. You'll be protected." I took the card, ignoring Dante's darkening expression. "Thank you. And good luck. With the baby." Outside, the evening air felt cleaner, lighter than it had in months. I walked to my car. Dante's car, technically, knowing I would drive it back to the estate, pack my few personal belongings, and leave. Not to my old apartment, which Dante had paid off, but somewhere new. Somewhere he couldn't find me. As I slid behind the wheel, my phone vibrated with a text from Gabriella. "Whatever you decide, I'll help you. You deserve better than this. Call me when you're safe." I hadn't expected that. An ally from within Dante's inner circle. But Gabriella had always been different, had always seen more clearly than her brother wanted to admit. Starting the engine, I took one last look at the lake house where I had once believed I would build a future with Dante Salvatore. Through the massive windows, I could see him still standing where I had left him, watching me. Beside him, Valentina remained poised and determined, one hand resting protectively on her belly. I had no illusions about what would happen next. Dante would negotiate with Vincenzo, would likely acknowledge Valentina's child to prevent a war between families. The scandal would be managed, controlled, as all scandals were in his world, and eventually, he would find someone new to stand beside him, to wear his ring, to believe the carefully crafted version of himself he presented to the world. But it wouldn't be me. Not anymore. As I drove away from the lake house, from Dante, from the gilded cage I had almost willingly entered, I felt something unexpected beneath the grief and betrayal, relief. The weight of pretending not to see the darkness, of accepting partial truths, of ignoring my instincts. It lifted with each mile that separated me from the man I had loved, but never truly known. By the time I reached the main road, tears were streaming down my face, but I was smiling through them. Ahead lay uncertainty, difficulty, the challenge of rebuilding a life Dante had systematically dismantled as he integrated me into his world. But it was my life again, my choices, my future, unwritten by anyone but me. In the rearview mirror, I caught a final glimpse of the lake house growing smaller in the distance. I didn't know what confrontation was unfolding inside between Dante and Valentina, what truths were finally being spoken, what consequences would follow, and for the first time since I'd met Dante Salvatore, I realized I didn't need to know. Their story would continue without me, and mine, my real story, was just beginning. 6 months later, the cafe was busy for a Wednesday afternoon, filled with students from the nearby university and professionals taking late lunch breaks. I wiped down the counter, enjoying the simple rhythm of honest work, the predictability of days that belonged entirely to me. After leaving Dante's world, I had started over. A new apartment in a different neighborhood, a job managing this small cafe owned by a retired couple who valued my bartending experience. It wasn't glamorous, wasn't draped in designer labels or dripping with diamonds, but it was mine, earned through my own merit, maintained through my own efforts. The bell above the door jingled, and I looked up to see Gabriella entering, her designer sunglasses perched on top of her head. Despite her wealth and status, she somehow managed to blend in, wearing simple jeans and a cashmere sweater, instead of the couture she favored at Salvatore events. "The usual?" I asked as she approached the counter. She smiled, sliding onto a bar stool. "Please. And maybe one of those almond croissants if you have any left." I prepared her latte, double shot, oat milk, no foam, and placed a croissant on a small plate. This had become our routine over the past months. Once a week, Gabriella would visit, bringing news from a world I had left behind but still found myself curious about. "How are you?" she asked, studying my face with the perceptiveness that ran in her family. "Good." I meant it. The owners are talking about making me a partner. Small stake, but it's a start. That's wonderful, Sophia. Her smile was genuine. You deserve it. I leaned against the counter, lowering my voice though no one was paying attention to us. And how are things over there? Gabriella understood my meaning immediately. Stable. The family's reached an agreement. The child will be acknowledged as a Salvatore, with all the protections that entails. And Valentina? Living in the family's Lake Michigan property. Comfortable, protected. The baby is due next month. She took a sip of her latte. A boy, apparently. I nodded, processing this information. Despite everything, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction knowing that Valentina had won her battle, that her child would have the recognition and security she had fought for. And Dante? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Gabriella's expression softened with sympathy. Working. Always working. He doesn't talk about you, if that's what you're wondering. I wasn't, I lied. He's different, she continued anyway. Harder. More focused on business, less on personal matters. I understood what she wasn't saying. Dante had retreated further into the darkness of his world, had embraced the cold calculation that had always been part of him. But that love, or what he had believed was love, had temporarily softened. I heard about Celeste, Gabriella said after a moment. After you left, I confronted him, made him tell me everything. I stiffened. And I'm sorry, for my part in it all, for not seeing clearly what kind of man my brother had become. Her eyes met mine, filled with regret. You were right to leave, Sophia. Braver than I could have been. Not brave, I corrected her. Just unwilling to live a life built on lies. She nodded, understanding. The child, Celeste's baby, is with a good family. I've made sure of it personally, and I've arranged for a trust fund in the child's name, separate from Dante's control. When he turns 18, he'll have choices. Resources. A lump formed in my throat at this unexpected kindness. Thank you. It was the right thing to do. She finished her latte, setting the cup down with a finality that suggested our conversation about the Salvatores was concluding. So, any interesting plans for the weekend? I welcomed the change of subject, the return to the normalcy of my new life. Actually, yes. I've been seeing someone, just casually, but he's nice. Normal. I smiled. A professor at the university. We're going to a concert on Friday. That's wonderful. Gabriella's approval felt genuine, free of the judgment I might have expected from someone in her world. You deserve happiness, Sophia. Real happiness, not the counterfeit version my brother offered. As she gathered her things to leave, I felt compelled to ask one final question. Do you ever think about leaving? Starting over somewhere new, away from the family business? Gabriella paused, considering. Every day, she admitted quietly. But family is complicated. Loyalty, history, blood. They bind you in ways that are hard to break. She squeezed my hand. That's why what you did took such courage. You chose yourself over the golden cage. Not many people can do that. After she left, I returned to my work, to the simple pleasures of creating drinks and serving customers who saw me as Sophia the cafe manager, not Sophia the mafia boss's fiancée. As I moved through the familiar routines of my day, I realized that Gabriella was right. Choosing myself had required courage, but it had also granted me freedom. Dante Salvatore had offered me a life of luxury and power, of passion and possession. He had wanted to own me, to shape me, to make me an extension of himself and his empire. For a time, I had been willing to surrender to that seduction, to lose myself in his intensity. But in the end, I had chosen a different path, one without diamonds or mansions or security details, but one where I could look in the mirror each morning and recognize the woman staring back at me. One where my happiness wasn't dependent on believing carefully crafted lies, where my future wasn't tied to a man whose darkness would eventually consume everything in its path. As the afternoon sun slanted through the cafe windows, warming my skin, I smiled to myself. Valentina had been right about one thing. Dante Salvatore did consume those who loved him, did leave them broken when his narrative required a new chapter. But she had been wrong about another. Not everyone who fell under his spell was destined to share her fate. Some of us, the lucky ones, the strong ones, found the courage to walk away before the golden cage became a prison, before love became dependence, before power became control. And in walking away, we found something more precious than all the luxury Dante Salvatore could provide: ourselves, whole and free, ready to write our own stories on our own terms. That night, as I locked up the cafe and stepped into the cool evening air, I didn't look over my shoulder, didn't scan the street for black SUVs or watchful security men. For the first time in months, I truly believed what my heart had been telling me since I drove away from the lake house. The chapter of my life titled Dante Salvatore was finally, irrevocably closed, and the pages ahead were gloriously, terrifyingly blank, waiting for me to fill them with a story entirely my own.